Welcome back to Venture Vibes. Today, we're diving into something truly heartwarming and real: why more and more Americans are calling Malaysia the most hospitable country in the world. This isn't just a feel-good opinion. It's backed by personal experiences, migration patterns, and even growing diplomatic, social, and tourism trends in 2025. So sit back, because by the end of this video, you'll understand why American expats, backpackers, retirees, and even diplomats are saying, there's no welcome like a Malaysian welcome. Let's start with what hospitality means to Americans. For most, it's about feeling safe, valued, and respected. It's about kindness, community, and warmth, not just service with a smile, but genuine care. And that's exactly what many have discovered in Malaysia. In 2025, surveys conducted by several expat platforms including Internations and Live and Invest Overseas show that Malaysia ranks in the top 3 for friendliness, but among Americans specifically, it ranks number 1 for feeling instantly accepted into the culture. Unlike tourist-heavy places where friendliness can feel transactional, Malaysia's hospitality has a deep cultural foundation. Across races, Malay, Chinese, Indian, Indigenous, the value of tetamu adalah rezeki, or guests are a blessing, is something people live by. Whether you're in a kampung in Johor or a condo in KL, Americans repeatedly say that locals invite them for dinner, offer help during emergencies, and treat them not like foreigners, but like extended family. One recent story that went viral in 2025 involved a couple from Texas who lost their bags at KLIA2. A Grab driver not only waited with them for 2 hours but also drove them to a nearby mall, helped them shop for essentials, and refused to take a tip. Stories like this are all over Reddit threads, travel blogs, and even official tourism videos. Americans are not just witnessing kindness, they're experiencing it firsthand. Beyond individual encounters, the system in Malaysia supports this spirit of hospitality. For example, the Malaysia My Second Home (MM2H) program has been revised again in 2025 to be more inclusive, especially for retirees. Now, American applicants with a steady pension and low criminal record are finding it easier to settle long-term, with less red tape than in countries like Portugal or Thailand. What's important is not just that the visa process is easier, it's that locals are actually happy to welcome them in. And then, there's the food culture. This might seem like a small point, but sharing food is one of the most powerful ways people bond. Americans in Malaysia often say that whether it's a Hari Raya open house, a Deepavali celebration, or a simple Mamak gathering, they're always invited to eat. And not just as spectators, but as part of the community. In fact, a recent 2025 food tourism campaign by Tourism Malaysia showed that over 65% of Americans polled said the hospitality through food in Malaysia. But let's zoom out. Why now? Why 2025? Part of the reason lies in what's happening outside Malaysia. Many Americans are disillusioned by growing division, rising costs, and social isolation in their own country. Back home, strangers don't often talk to each other in elevators or buses. But in Malaysia, Americans say that even a quick trip to the Pasar Malam turns into a genuine social interaction. In a world growing more disconnected, Malaysia is doing the opposite, and Americans feel that contrast deeply. There's also a deeper spiritual layer. In 2025, many Americans are seeking not just travel or retirement, but meaningful connection. Malaysia's diverse but harmonious religious culture, from mosques and temples to churches and gurdwaras, creates an environment where respect is the default, not the exception. Even during Ramadan, many non-Muslim Americans are invited to break fast with Muslim friends and neighbors. It's something that surprises them, but in the best possible way. A 2025 New York Times travel report highlighted how American tourists in Malaysia often return with stories of not just the sights, but the people. One journalist wrote, "It's the only country where I went to see the Petronas Towers, but what I'll remember forever is the Nasi Lemak seller who gave me a meal when I ran out of cash." That's Malaysia. Another important shift happened earlier this year. After the Malaysian government announced a new American tourism partnership initiative aimed at strengthening cultural exchange, we've seen more bilateral tourism programs, student exchanges, and curated rural homestay projects specifically for American visitors. These are not commercial setups, they're immersive cultural programs where Americans live with local families. The feedback. Overwhelmingly positive. Americans are even talking about the emotional security they feel in Malaysia. It's not about being treated like a VIP, it's about being treated like a human being. In Penang, a retired school principal from Ohio told Channel News Asia that she cried when her neighbors threw her a birthday party. She hadn't had one in over a decade. She said, "They barely knew me. But they made me feel like I belonged." That's what hospitality means in Malaysia. And it's not limited to big cities. In 2025, smaller towns like Taiping, Alor Setter, and Muar are being discovered by American slow travelers. And what they report is consistent: less commercialization, more heart. In fact, several American vloggers in 2025 have shifted their content from best places to visit to people you'll never forget in Malaysia. In 2025, with the world more connected yet emotionally divided than ever, Malaysia stands out because it hasn't lost its soul. It's not chasing hypermodernism at the expense of warmth. It's not so fast-paced that it forgets people. And to Americans who are tired of being treated like numbers, this is powerful. If you ask them, they'll tell you, Malaysian hospitality is not perfect. But it's real. It's not packaged. It's lived. And in a world where many countries are too busy to care, Malaysia still stops, smiles, and says, "Come, eat with us." That's why Americans aren't just visiting Malaysia, they're falling in love with it. They're returning. They're staying. Not for beaches, not for shopping malls, but for people. For kindness. For community. For a way of life that reminds them of what being human is all about. Thank you for watching. If this touched your heart the way Malaysia has touched so many Americans, don't forget to subscribe to Venture Vibes, where we explore the stories that matter most, the stories behind the smiles.